"You're late," my mother said the moment she stepped onto the porch, her suitcase rolling behind her across the cracked concrete. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 6:02 a.m. 2 minutes late. 2 minutes, Mom, I replied, forcing a smile, my breath fogging up in the chilly morning air. I stepped out of the car to help with the luggage, but my movements froze when the front door swung open again. My sister Lauren sauntered out with her own bright pink suitcase in tow. My smile curdled on my lips. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my gut was already twisting with suspicion. My mum's expression was unnaturally bright, far too cheerful for something that was clearly wrong. "Oh, Violet," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "We decided Lauren should come instead of you. She's been so stressed lately and she really needs this trip." The words felt like ice water poured down my back. "Instead of me?" I repeated, stunned. "Mom, I planned this trip. I paid for everything." She waved dismissively as though I were complaining about the weather. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart, but you're always working so hard. You can take a trip some other time. Lauren needs this more." Lauren didn't even pretend to look guilty. She leaned her hip against the railing, smiling like a cat who'd just caught a particularly stupid mouse. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, her voice syrupy with fake gratitude. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for someone to explain the joke, but there was no punchline, only the heavy silence of expectation, as though I was supposed to smile and accept it, like I always did. A moment later, my dad came out, dragging his suitcase. He avoided my eyes entirely as he handed it off to me, like I was some unpaid chauffeur. "This is unbelievable," I said, my voice shaking, the hurt bubbling into anger. "This was supposed to be my trip, my gift to you." "Well, it still is," my mom said, smiling, oblivious, or perhaps indifferent, to the crack forming in my composure. "It's just that Lauren is coming instead of you. Don't make a big deal out of this. Your sister really needs a break." My name is Violet, and for the past 2 years, I had worked overtime, saved every penny, and meticulously planned a dream trip to Europe for my parents, a thank you for everything they'd done. I booked luxury hotels, private guided tours, and first-class flights. But standing there in the driveway, I realized none of that mattered, because no matter how much I gave, in their eyes Lauren would always come first. I forced a tight smile and popped open the trunk. "Let's get going then," I said, my voice brittle with the effort of holding back the rising storm inside me. Fine. If they wanted Lauren, they could have her. But they weren't getting me along with her. The drive to the airport was suffocating. Lauren filled the silence with pointless chatter. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see that TikTok about Paris? Do you think we'll have time to shop, or are the tours like all day?" I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. "We'll figure it out," Mom said with her usual breezy indifference. She'd said. They'd already cut me out. My dad cleared his throat, trying to bridge the silence. "Thanks for driving us, Violet. I know this is unusual." I caught his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Unusual, that's one way to put it." Lauren leaned forward, her hand on my seat. "You're not mad, right? This is so generous of you, letting me take your spot. I could never afford this on my own." I couldn't trust my voice, so I just smiled, small and cold. "Of course, Lauren. Enjoy the trip." At the curb, I helped unload their luggage with hands that trembled from sheer restraint. Mum gave me a hug. "Thank you for understanding. This means so much to us, and to Lauren." I nodded, unable to speak. Lauren flashed her blinding smile one last time. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." I watched them disappear into the terminal, the anger swelling inside me like a storm cloud. The drive home was a blur of white noise and simmering rage. By the time I parked, my hands were shaking. I stormed into my house, pulled out my laptop, and logged into every travel account. Hotel reservations, cancelled, tours, refunded, airline upgrades, gone. My fingers moved with ruthless precision, each click stripping away a piece of the trip I'd so lovingly built. If they wanted to take my trip, they could, but not on my dime. Part 2. Aftermath and Rebellion. The phone started buzzing before their flight even landed. My phone vibrated non-stop as I unpacked the suitcase I'd packed for myself, the one that would have taken me to the cities I'd dreamed about for years. I neatly hung up the dresses I'd chosen, the ones meant for strolling along cobbled streets. I finally checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls and texts from my mom. "Violet, the hotel says we don't have a reservation. What's going on?" "Violet, this isn't funny. Call me." Then Lauren, "You're being petty." "Fix this now." I laughed, loud and bitter. They expected me to clean up their mess after they stole my trip. Not this time. When Mom called again, I picked up. Her voice was already frantic. "Violet, what did you do? They say the reservation was cancelled. None of the tours are confirmed." "I cancelled them," I said, savouring the stunned silence. "Why would you do that?" "Oh, I don't know," I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe because you took my trip. We thought you'd understand." Understand that Lauren needed my trip more than I did? I've been understanding my whole life, Mom. I'm done. I hung up before she could respond and turned off my phone. Part 3. Breaking Free. The silence was bliss. I spent days in peaceful solitude, sipping coffee, reading, rediscovering the quiet pleasures of living only for myself. By day 3, curiosity won. I turned my phone back on to a tidal wave of voicemails. Mom. "Violet, you're humiliating us." Lauren. "You're ruining everything. Grow up." Dad. "We need to talk." I deleted them all, except one. My mom's final voicemail, quieter this time, her voice stretched thin. "We're back at the airport. The trip is ruined. Your sister's devastated. Your father and I are disappointed." Good. They should be. Later, my friend Grace stopped by, coffee in hand and curiosity in her eyes. "Your mom called me," she said, setting down the cups. "Of course she did." "She wanted me to talk some sense into you." Grace smirked. "I told her you'd get back to her when you were ready." I exhaled, relieved to have someone on my side for once. The next week I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a trip for myself. No parents, no sister, no strings. I chose Italy, a place I'd always wanted to visit but never dared because I'd been too busy saving for family vacations that never included me. The moment my flight confirmation arrived, I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't just Violet, the reliable daughter. I was Violet, independent, free, and finally done trying to earn love that should have been given freely. Sometimes standing up for yourself means losing people you thought you couldn't live without. But in that space, you find something even better, yourself, and that's a trip worth taking. I stood up as they approached, my coffee cup warm in my hands, the crisp afternoon breeze rustling my hair. My mother's forced smile faltered the moment she saw me. "Violet," she said, her voice clipped with tension. "I suppose you're here to gloat." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm here to get a few things straight." Lauren rolled her eyes, already annoyed. "God, you're still mad about that? Let it go already." My dad stepped forward, raising a hand like he could physically smooth things over. "Let's not turn this into a scene. We've all had a long flight." I didn't move aside. "We're not doing this inside. This won't take long." The three of them stood in front of me, the suitcases between us like a barrier, or maybe a symbol of everything that had built up over the years. The anger that had simmered since that morning in the driveway had settled into something sharper now, clarity. "I need you all to hear me," I began, my voice firm but even. "I'm done being the backup plan. I'm done being the fixer. I'm done sacrificing my time, my energy, and my money just so Lauren can have everything handed to her." Lauren opened her mouth to object, but I held up a hand to silence her. This trip was the last straw, I continued. I planned it, I paid for it, and you decided, without even asking me, that Lauren should have my place. Do you even realize how humiliating that was? To stand there and watch you walk out with her like I was just the driver. It wasn't personal, my mom said, her voice defensive. Lauren needed a break. So did I shot back. The difference is no one ever seems to care when I need something. My dad let out a heavy sigh. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said. And it's not just the trip, it's everything. Every holiday, every family decision, every time I'm expected to step aside because Lauren needs something more. I've been making excuses for it for years, telling myself it's not that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. Lauren's arms crossed tightly over her chest. So, what do you want? An apology? No, I said. I don't want words. I want you all to understand that this is the last time you treat me like an afterthought. You don't get my time, my money, or my help anymore. You want something. You figure it out. You clean up your own messes. I'm not your safety net. Mom's face paled. We're family, Violet. Families support each other. Funny how that only applies when you want something from me, I said, my voice cold. Where was that support when I needed it? When I worked overtime to pay for Christmas gifts you gave Lauren credit for? When I cancelled my plans to help Mum recover after surgery? When I paid for Dad's car repairs because Lauren had maxed out her credit cards again? My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. My dad's expression hardened, defensive even now. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, he said. No, Dad, I said softly. I'm finally seeing how small you made me. Lauren muttered, God, you're so dramatic. Dramatic? I echoed, shaking my head with a bitter smile. No, Lauren. Dramatic would have been me cutting you all off without a word. Dramatic would have been posting every cancelled reservation, every refunded tour online so your friends could see what really happened. Instead, I'm standing here, giving you one final chance to hear me. My mum reached for my hand, her face pleading. Violet, please. I took a step back. Number, I'm done. The silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of every unspoken resentment, every time they'd taken me for granted, every time they'd made me feel less than. My dad's jaw clenched, his pride still too thick to let him say what he should. Lauren was already scrolling through her phone and bored. My mother's eyes were glassy, torn between denial and guilt. It was all so familiar, the pattern of guilt, excuses, and gaslighting they relied on to pull me back in, not this time. I hope you enjoyed your trip, I said quietly, because it's the last thing you'll ever get from me. I turned, walked back to my car, and got in without another word. They stood there, stunned, watching me drive away, not because they couldn't believe I was leaving, but because, for the first time, they couldn't believe I meant it. And I did. The relief was instant, like a tight band snapping off my chest. The moment I turned the corner, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They could call me cold. They could spin their version of events to anyone who would listen. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was free. For years, I'd been the reliable one, the peacemaker, the giver. The sister who was supposed to be fine on her own because she was so responsible. They never stopped to wonder what it cost me, but now they had no choice, because I wasn't playing that role anymore. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and booked a trip for myself. This time, I chose a destination that had nothing to do with their preferences, their comfort, or their approval. This trip would be mine from start to finish. As I confirmed the booking, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done being angry at them for being who they were. What they did was wrong, but they were never going to change. What mattered was that I had changed. I'd finally chosen myself, and that felt better than any apology ever could. "You're late," my mum said as she stepped out onto the porch, pulling her suitcase behind her. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. It was 6:02 a.m. "2 minutes late, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. I got out of the car to help with the luggage, but then I saw her, my sister Lauren, emerging from the house with her own suitcase in tow. My smile froze. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mum turned to me, her expression unnaturally cheerful. "Oh, Violet, we decided Lauren should come instead of you. She's been so stressed lately and she really needs this trip." My chest tightened, cold disbelief flooding in. "Instead of me?" "Mom, I've been planning this for years. I paid for everything." She waved a hand dismissively like it was all some minor misunderstanding. "And we're grateful, sweetheart. But you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Lauren needs this right now." Lauren didn't even pretend to look guilty. She just smirked, leaning her weight onto one hip. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, her voice dripping with fake gratitude. I stood there, my heart pounding in my ears. My dad shuffled out a minute later, avoiding eye contact as he handed me his suitcase. Not a word, not a glance, just silent complicity. "This is unbelievable," I said, my voice shaking. "This was supposed to be our trip, something I saved for, something I wanted to share with you." "Well, it still is," my mom said with a bright, forced smile. "Just with Lauren instead. Don't make this a big deal, Violet. Your sister really needs a break. My name is Violet, and for the past 2 years, I worked overtime, skipped vacations, and saved every spare penny to give my parents the trip of a lifetime. Flights, luxury hotels, guided tours. I planned every detail down to the last dinner reservation. But as I stood there, watching Lauren slide into the backseat of my car, I realized something I'd been refusing to see for years. It didn't matter how much I gave or how hard I worked. In their eyes, Lauren would always come first. I clenched my jaw, swallowed the furious words building inside me, and forced a brittle smile. "Let's get going," I said flatly. If they wanted Lauren, they could have her, but they wouldn't be getting my generosity along with her. The drive to the airport was suffocatingly quiet, except for Lauren's endless chatter. "Mom, do you think we'll have time to go shopping in Paris? I saw this amazing boutique on TikTok." My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles pale against the leather. "Of course," Mom said with a gentle laugh. "We'll figure it out when we get there." Like I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. At one point, Dad cleared his throat. "Thanks for driving us, Violet. I know this probably feels a bit awkward." I caught his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Awkward? That's an interesting word for it." He said nothing else. Lauren leaned forward practically in my ear. "You're not mad, right? This is really big of you letting me go instead. I couldn't have afforded this on my own." I clenched my teeth, forcing out a strained, "Of course, Lauren. Enjoy the trip." By the time I pulled up to the terminal, my patience was threadbare. I helped with the bags, and my mom hugged me like I was doing them all a favor. "This means so much to Lauren," she said softly. "Sure," I said, my voice hollow. Lauren beamed as they disappeared into the crowd. "Thanks, Violet! You're the best!" The ride home blurred in my memory, each mile fueled by a mounting sense of betrayal. "Thanks for understanding. This means a lot to Lauren." The words echoed until they felt burned into my brain. I walked into my house, threw my bag onto the floor, and opened my laptop. Every reservation, every upgrade, every tour I had booked with my money, cancelled. Refunds processed. I didn't even feel guilty. If they wanted Lauren, they could plan her trip themselves. The calls started as soon as they landed. My phone buzzed with one missed call after another as I unpacked the suitcase meant for my trip. By the time I hung up the last dress, my mom's texts were coming rapid fire. Violet, what's going on? The hotel says there's no reservation. Call me. Violet, this isn't funny. Lauren left a voicemail, her voice high and shrill. Violet, this is so petty. We're stranded because of you. I let it all go to voicemail, pouring myself a glass of wine and savouring the silence. Eventually I picked up just to stop the barrage. Violet, what did you do? My mum's voice hissed through the line. The hotel says the reservation is gone. None of the tours are booked. Calmly I said, I cancelled them. There was a stunned silence then. Why would you do that? Oh, I don't know, I said. Maybe because you decided Lauren deserved my trip more than I did. You're always so dramatic. Lauren snapped in the background. No, I said. I'm just done. I hung up and powered off my phone. Three days later, I turned it back on to a flood of voicemails. My mom's voice grew increasingly frantic in each one. My dad sounded exhausted. Lauren sounded, as always, entitled. I deleted every message without listening to the end. A week after they returned, I parked outside their house, waiting on the porch swing as their taxi pulled up. Their faces were drawn and tired, Lauren's pout as dramatic as ever. Well, Lauren said, I hope you're happy, Violet. I raised an eyebrow. Happy about what? Our trip was a disaster, my mom huffed. We stayed in dumps, ate garbage food. Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up and have no reservations? Sounds rough, I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. But hey, you got your bonding time with Lauren. You set us up to fail, my mom snapped. No, I said calmly, standing up. I planned a trip for the three of us. You cut me out. You can't enjoy my work after you replaced me. You didn't have to cancel everything, my dad muttered. Why would I pay for a trip I wasn't invited to? I asked, crossing my arms. You wanted Lauren. Then plan your own trip next time. Lauren sneered. You're so dramatic. And you're so entitled, I said. Do you even understand how much work and sacrifice went into that trip? You just assumed everything would magically happen for you because it always does. Stunned silence. I'm done being the family doormat, I said. You chose Lauren. Again, I choose me. I walked past them to my car, leaving them gaping behind me. That night, my best friend Grace showed up with coffee. I heard the whole thing, she said, smirking. Your mum called me. Of course she had. What did you say? I asked. Grace grinned. That you were probably too busy living your best life to care. We clinked coffee cups. So, she asked, what's next? Anything I want, I said, grinning for the first time in weeks. 2 months later, I landed in Rome, alone. My itinerary, my pace, my adventure. I wandered cobbled streets, ate gelato on the Spanish steps, and filled my journal with dreams no one else had a say in. For the first time, I wasn't living for them. I was living for me, and it felt damn good.